Roommates and I made a terrible mistake letting this guy move in. And now I'm desperate to get him out of my life. I live in a 3-bedroom apartment with usually only 2 other people. But recently one of them asked if a colleague of theirs could move in for a month or 2 and set up in the living room. They said that he was willing to pay rent and would be out as soon as possible. We all agreed, because the sound of paying less rent for a bit sounded nice, and none of us used the living room anyway. As soon as this guy moved in, he became a huge problem. He'd leave piss on the toilet, leave dirty cups and plates all over the place, played music on his speaker at all kinds of hours, and in general was just a mess of a person. I couldn't even walk into the kitchen without him trauma dumping his entire life on me. I just nod my head along and slowly walk back to my room. He was, in general, exhausting. We bought him a curtain to set up along the living room wall so he'd have some privacy, but he never put it up. This was a problem because the guy insisted on sleeping naked, and he'd never put on boxers when he went to the bathroom. Eventually we put the curtain up for him because we were sick of getting flashed all the time. I personally hated the dude because one day he randomly decided my dog preferred him to me. He kept trying to take her for walks without my permission. He tried to get her to sleep with him at night, which never worked out because she prefers her crate. When we had our daily training session, he'd interrupt and tell me I was doing everything wrong and insist on taking over. It was actually a bit funny when he would randomly try to prove he could handle her better. She tends to follow me around the house, so when he'd see her he'd order her to sit, stay or come over to him, which she never did even once. She tended to ignore him, and I don't really blame her since he smelt so bad. Finally rent day came. We usually pay $900 each for rent, but we told the guy from the start he only had to pay $400 each month since he didn't have his own room, and we understood he was saving up for a place. Of course, he only handed over $200. He said work was tough and he'd pay us back in payment plans to make up for it. My roommate, who was in charge of the bills, said it would be fine and he'd cover for him until he could pay him back. I didn't hold my breath. It only got really bad the very next week, when this dude messed up twice in very big ways. The first was when my roommate who handles the bills brought his new girlfriend over for the first time. She seemed like a nice girl and she even offered to cook dinner for all of us, which I thought was sweet. In came the mess of a man, drunk and shirtless, who saw the girlfriend and immediately made a dash for her. He was all up in her space, and made a lot of comments about her body. My roommate didn't seem to care, so I stepped in and told him he needed to give her some room to breathe. He shoved me in the chest and started yelling at me. He went on a rant about how I thought I was better than him because I could afford food and a car and he couldn't. He said I'd never understand the trauma he went through growing up with parents who didn't care about him, and how no one wanted to give him a good job. I legit looked this man in the eye and told him he had no right to assume his life was more difficult than anyone else's, that he knew nothing and needed to stop the woes of me act, because it did nothing but make him seem like a moocher for attention. At this point the girlfriend just grabbed her purse and left. I really don't blame her. I tried to leave myself, when the guy physically stopped me and asked if I wanted to fight. I turned to my roommate that had invited him here, and told him to do something about this drunk mess because I wasn't anyone's parent here. My roommate went over and talked to the guy, and he calmed down. By the next day it seemed like he either forgot, or was pretending the previous day hadn't happened. I couldn't tell you which. Then 2 days later I came home from work to find vomit throughout the house. At first I thought it was the dude, but then I saw my dog in my bedroom throwing up. I got really worried and rushed her to the vet. I texted my roommates to ask what happened, and one texted back saying